Hey, friends. Well, it's been a lovely weekend. Some friends came to town, a bunch of kids stayed over for a couple nights. Annalise has been in heaven. She didn't want them to leave. It's been a beautiful time. And we went to the balloon fiesta this morning. Kind of an incredible experience watching these giant orbs just lift into the sky. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Very, very cool couple of days. And so I think throughout that experience and throughout this time, I've sort of had an interesting sensation, which is I'm personally somebody who socializing and being around people, doing things in the external always feels as though, I mean, it's something that certainly provides me with a wonderful energy. And especially watching my daughter or my wife Katie just have such a great time being around other people is really nourishing to me. But my own orientation to socializing, and I'm kind of only realizing this as I think it through, there's a sense that I have of being in service in a way. And so while it's nourishing, it's also in some ways it requires energy. It requires an externalization of energy in the form of actual service to actual human beings, actual, not just the idea of being in service. And I again, I love it. I find it deeply nourishing and inspiring. But I think what the sensation that I've felt is that what gives me the strength to be present is connecting as deeply as I can with a sense of the infinite. And that's kind of it sounds like a very woo-woo or esoteric way of thing to say, but what I really mean is just being connected to consciousness regularly, checking in. Because I think, this is the thing that I've noticed as somebody who's quite happy in a contemplative, meditative kind of life. Socializing, being around other people, is a lot of energy and attention out there. And relationships are, people are popping up all over everywhere. And there's communication, and it's all outside. It's not like having a solitary life. It is quite different than that. And so I think this is where my sense of what's really going on underneath, when I say that I feel like it's a form of service, I sort of mean that I just feel a kind of responsibility, I think. It shows up as a sense of responsibility to open a membrane of care. And what showed up just as I was sitting down to do this post, I was kind of just reflecting on that sensation and what the last couple of days have felt like, and I recognized that what makes it, again, it's back to that feeling of connecting to the infinite, connecting to consciousness. The infinite has the power to organize the finite. Infinity can organize finitude. And so the more finite stuff, activity, energy, human beings we are engaging with, the greater the need for a really deep connection to the infinite, because we're trying to organize more stuff. and it's almost like the charge that you need in a battery to run a light. If you want more light, you need more charge. And so, again, this is not to say that I was organizing the weekend, but that sense of like throwing out a membrane of care around a group of people, around a little mini community for a short period of time, feels like it's an exercise in, okay, let's connect. And that principle of that the infinite organizes the finite really shows up for me as being a noteworthy thing to be aware of, and just to kind of keep, feels like one to kind of file away and keep on hand. Because when things feel like they're kind of getting pulled off, which happens, didn't happen at all this weekend, not once, and I think everybody in a group who is part of a group dynamic, if we're all doing that, then there's a real sense that the integrity really kind of, there's a strong membrane, that membrane of care really has a very firm structure. But that sense that the infinite organizes the finite, and not vice versa, is a key for me. And I think it gives me, especially as, again, I think that it's my habit, it's my inclination it's certainly my inclination and my tendency to be intensely available, and therefore there's a certain charge that being in relationship and being in interactions with other people evokes in me. It's like it draws a level of charge up to the surface. And I just find myself, that's part of what's inspiring. That's part of the thing that makes it feel like, hey, look at me being a human being in the external world. and I think it's both in this kind of day and age. I work in a very virtual way, and the kind of what's happening to community nowadays. I think it's really interesting to observe what happens when you get a bunch of people in the same house. 6 kids and whatever, 6 adults. It's so much fun. It's such a beautiful thing to watch human dynamics, to watch other parents, to watch my daughter fall in love with a brand new friend after an hour, and just be googly-eyed over another, slightly older girl who just like hung the moon because she's 7 instead of 4. It's remarkable. And if I can stay tapped in to the infinite, then I can carry all that. Then I don't have to then I can draw boundaries very consciously, and I can sort of like navigate the circumstances gracefully, as opposed to a kind of going unconscious. That's the temptation sometimes when there's a lot of input, a lot of stimulation, is to go unconscious and then quickly. Interesting, if we find out what our habits are pretty quick, and of course to find out what our habits are, we have to be conscious to some extent. But if we can also find some space to be free and to be genuinely, and if all the people in the group are kind of doing that, opening themselves in that way, making themselves available for genuine contact, it makes for a really wonderful capacity for community. So I'm very grateful for this weekend, for this balloon fiesta that comes to Albuquerque every year. Thanks for watching, folks. Have a wonderful day. I appreciate you. I'll see you tomorrow.